Colonel Rosen survived that. He was able to swim.
He was able to swim, and years later, when he started being asked to be a speaker, in 1995, when the world decided to recognize the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II, my husband became very much in demand as a speaker and ended up, I live in Washington, D.C. area, and he ended up speaking at all the major universities in the Washington, D.C. area, and a lot of other reunion events in different parts of the country. And people always asked, when the first ship, the Orioga Maru, was sunk, bombed and sunk by American Navy dive bombers, because of course the Japanese were not about to put any identification on their ships. It was a cargo ship. Hey, fair game. You enemy ship, you sunk it. So when the first ship was sunk, the Orioga Maru, those who were able to get off the ship jumped ship, and they were about a mile offshore and were able to get back to shore. My husband grew up in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and learned how to swim before he could walk. So he used to claim he had terrible form, and I said, who cares? You can swim, you can stay afloat. So he was able to swim ashore, and what they tried to do, the guys who were able, was pick up a lot of the flotsam and stuff floating from the ship in the water and put other POWs who couldn't swim up on doors and boards and everything else and push them into shore. Well, when he would talk about this in a lot of the speaking that he did, he was asked, well, why didn't you jump off the other side of the ship? And he used to say, because it was a hell of a long way to Australia. So that was how he managed to get off the first ship, the Orioga Maru. And then they were, as you said, they were rounded up by the Japanese and held on an open tennis court that had one water spigot for these hundreds of people who were so cramped on the tennis court that they were sitting in between each other's crotch on the tennis court for days until they were then rounded up and brought to another port and put on the Enora Maru, the second ship, which again started off from the Philippines to try to get them to Japan. When they finally got, and that ship was bombed also, I mean, was strafed but didn't sink. It did get to Japan, but when they got to Japan, they tied it right up next to another Japanese ship that was in dock. Perfect target, 2 ships.
That was in Takao Harbor.
Yeah, that was, and that was the Brazil Maru. That was that.
The Brazil Maru
There were
was the one
5
that made it
Marus.
to Japan.
To Japan. Right.
Yeah.
The Enora Maru.
So 5.
Right, yeah. And then actually from Japan, Mel ended up being taken to Korea. And when he was liberated, not for a month after World War II officially ended, because the Americans didn't know where so many of these Japanese POW camps were located. The Japanese had occupied Korea for 30 years before World War II. And they had places all over Korea where they interned POWs. But when he was finally liberated, he was liberated from what the Japanese called Jinsen, which was Incheon, Korea. And the interesting part to his situation was that 20 years from the day he was liberated from Incheon, he reported back to Korea as the 20th General Support Group Commander, which encompassed the area where his old POW camp had been located. And while he was there on that assignment, it was a huge command. He had 5 airfields, 2 big hospitals, and over 5,000 Korean civilians working for him in that command. But when he went back for that command, first 6 months he was there, he was very friendly with Mayor Yoon, who was the mayor of Incheon at the time. And every time anything would go on, as the 20th General Group's commander, he would be included. So he would be introduced as Colonel Rosen. He commands the 20th General Support Group, for which over 5,000 Korean civilians were. And the last 6 months he was there, or the last 7 months he was there, he was introduced as Colonel Rosen. He speaks Hangul because my husband had an affinity for learning languages. He learned Tagalog while he was in the Philippines. He learned Tagalog. But he was introduced as the commanding officer of the 20th General Support Group who speaks Hangul. When he was in the Philippines, one of the first things he did with the 88th Field Artillery.
Yes, the same unit as my dad.
Right, yeah, exactly, Joe. And he had his first sergeant every day. He said, Sergeant, I can't remember his name, it was something like Molinas.
Molina?
Molinas. He said, I would like 5 new words in Tagalog on my desk every morning. So the first list that he had, 20 words, he asked for 20 words on his desk so he could start learning Tagalog. The first thing on the list, when Mel looked at it, he was able to figure out something. He called Sergeant Molinas in and he said, why did you put this on the top of the list? And what it said was, I love you very much. In Tagalog. And his sergeant said, well, sir, he said, you are a bachelor? I just thought it might be a useful thing for you to know.
That's how you won your heart? That's how you won your heart?
No, I didn't speak to Tagalog.
Romantic, right?
I met him a month after he came back from prison camp.
Okay, can I continue?